Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Tonight, New York State now says more than 10,000 people have been killed there. That is nearly half of the more than 23,000 Americans who have died from the coronavirus.
The death toll in Brazil continues to rise, and it's now the hardest hit country in South America.
The total number of coronavirus deaths worldwide has surpassed 150,000. This is according to data from Johns Hopkins University as of Friday U.S. time. The new total comes just a week after the global death toll reached 100,000.
Hey, all the more reason to use and enjoy your money while you still can, don't you think?
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, best-selling author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Today's date, May 19th, 2020. What began in February of this year as an unknown virus with unknown origins and consequences quickly spread to the politicians and scientists thinking our best response to fight the virus was to shut down our economy and hunker down. We took matters into our own hands by shutting down the nation's economy, and now we're witnessing one of the worst financial and emotional pandemics this country has seen since the Great Depression. So how did the politicians and scientists convince us to shut our lives down, follow the herd, and watch all heck break loose? They did this through fear, and more specifically, the fear of death. They played to our fears and the fear of dying. Yet, as sad as this pandemic has been, and certainly we do not want to play down the issue of people dying over it, it shows you how scary this can all be. But we have to go back and do a comparison of how many people in this country die each and every year. Now hang in there, folks. I know this is a retirement planning show, but I'm going somewhere with this. In fact, what I did, I looked back at 2017, just a random date, and we went to the CDC website, and we noted that in 2017, in this country, over 2.8 million Americans died. Now, of those deaths, let's take a look at the causes. Roughly 650,000 people died of heart disease. Cancer claimed another 600,000 lives. Accidents, they're around 170,000. Chronic lower respiratory diseases, about 160,000 deaths. Strokes, 146,000. Alzheimer's disease, something that took my father's life at a very young age, this surprised me, 121,000 deaths. Diabetes, 83,000. Influenza and pneumonia in 2017, over 55,000 deaths. And then finally, we get to nephritis, a syndrome from nephrosis, 50,000. And finally, the number that I'm concerned about could actually skyrocket as a result of the emotional strain caused by this virus. That's right, suicide. 47,000 people took their lives as a result of 2017 statistics. Now, the moral of this story is, folks, no matter how careful you are, no matter how much you try to avoid other people, the longer you live, here's what I've learned. Take note of this. If you live long enough, something's going to kill you. And that's a fact. And this is what makes our philosophy of the worry-free retirement so different than the rest of the financial world. Because instead of running scared and not spending our money, we are instead reminded that with death comes the realization that you better have a game plan in place to spend and enjoy your money while you still can. That's why in today's show, we're going to focus solely on the 4 safest places to invest your money in the 21st century. Well, welcome, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement, and I am that little man in the sweater vest, 401k rollover specialist, safe money specialist, and fiduciary Tony Walker, and we are continuing our series on the 4 safest investments for the 21st century. But before we do that, let's introduce the producer of today's show, none other than America's favorite financial sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orander, along with his sidekick at the graphics, Miss Megan Murphy. Okay, Tony, you're asking why are you starting the financial show talking about the number of deaths in this country? Because, folks, as I discussed in my latest book, Live Well, Die Broke, What I've discovered over the past 35 years and in meeting with over 15,000 savers is this. It's really hard to use and enjoy your money when you're literally scared to death to spend it. And when you look at the recent 30% overnight drop in the stock market, we're reminded just how fragile and unpredictable our money and, yes, this economy really is. So when I come back, I'm going to share with you my humble opinion of the 4 safest investments for the 21st century and why savers should include these products in a written game plan with a retirement planning specialist such as Tony Walker Financial. I'll be right back. You stay tuned. Good stuff coming your way. Taxes, fees, penalties, complicated government rules all add up to worry, confusion, and the loss of enjoyment of your hard-earned money. That's why I'm offering a free educational resource to help free you from the bondage of your 401k called 401k Rollovers Made Easy. To see just how easy it is to roll over your 401k, log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and order your free copy today. Last week we shared with you 2 of the safest investments for the 21st century, and that was number 1, bank instruments such as money markets, savings accounts, certificates of deposit, or CDs as they are more commonly known. And then the second safest investment we discussed last week was government-backed securities, which are basically loans we make to the government in return for a set amount of interest they pay us for the use of our money. Now, the reason we said the government bonds are so safe is because the government borrowing money from us has the ability to tax us to get that money right back. So basically they are very, very safe instruments. The other 2 safe places to consider are insurance contracts, more specifically fixed annuities, and finally the 4th safest investments to consider, something I refer to as dividend-oriented ETFs. So let's start out with annuities. And again, we're talking about fixed annuities here. Of course, very quickly, annuities are contracts, and these contracts are issued by insurance companies, very, very strong companies, and whereby the company agrees through this contract in exchange for something called the annuitant. That would be you. You're applying for this, and what you do is you give the company your investment, or what's known as a premium. Now, the product we'll be talking about today is something that gives you mailbox money. So let's take a look at this now, because all annuities have pros and cons, and we want to go over this very briefly. You know, recently, I guess with the recent coronavirus, as we filmed this show on May 19th, 2020, a lot of people that are doing dinner seminars, I guess, are not doing dinner seminars. And this is one of the problems we see. People rush out to these dinner seminars, plunk their money in annuities, and they don't really see the pros and the cons of them. So let's take a quick look at those. First of all, an annuity's primary function is principal protection. That's why savers love these. What you make can never be lost. Again, if it's a fixed annuity. Many times you can get into an annuity for $5,000, $10,000, so you don't have to have $500,000 to open an account. I like this. We've been talking about death today. We have a lot of clients. We have over 2,000 clients, and many of those people are over the age of 65. So with an annuity at death, that money goes immediately to those beneficiaries without probate. That's a huge advantage. Most of the annuities we offer have very little fees or no fees at all. And again, they're backed by wealthy, big insurance companies, which also there's some guarantees through the state insurance divisions called the State Guarantee Fund. Now, there are cons to annuities. There is no perfect investment, folks. Sometimes a con of an annuity, people don't realize this, even if they're tax deferred, can create tax problems. That's why you need to buy an annuity from a retirement specialist. Sometimes there can be very high fees. These are called variable annuities, and we don't sell those. Yep, they're complicated, I get it. But if somebody says, well, they're complicated, that would be like saying the Bible's complicated, so don't read it. I mean, that's ridiculous. Annuities are complicated, but that's why we've worked with thousands of annuities, and we understand these products very well. Yep, they do have surrender charges. You got to watch that. Usually they have very low rates of return. Now, some of you have said, well, Tony, I was at one of these dinner seminars and a fellow was talking about 6, 7, 8%. I'll take that all day long. Well, let's go to the next slide, because this is the danger of these annuities. Oh, by the way, years ago, I was asked by a very, very large insurance company to speak to a group of agents. There was about 500 agents at a conference. And I said, can I talk about anything? And they said, hey, Tony, you got 20 minutes. You talk about anything you want. And I showed this chart. Now, the introduction to these 500 agents was as follows. When I got this chart up there, I said two things. Either you're ignorant about annuities or you're unethical, either one, because we got a problem. Because I keep hearing people come into my office saying they're going to get 6, 7, 8%, and you're not telling them that there's a catch to that 6, 7, 8% return. So let's take a look at that. So again, with an income annuity, this is an income annuity for mailbox money, you have three values. You have the surrender value, the contract value, and the income account value. Now let's focus for a minute on the income value. That's one that everybody likes to sell, and I like these, but you have to remember that income value, let's say that's a 6% guaranteed return. The only purpose of that income value, folks, is to calculate the future value for mailbox money purposes. This is not a real number. So let's say we fast forward to the 10th year and you have $179,000 and you die. Do you get that? No, you don't get that. You would get whatever is in the contract value, which is generally much, much less. So the moral to the story here, folks, is if you're going to purchase an annuity, you have to understand the difference between accumulation products, which this is not, or an income annuity, which this is. And when you get into an income annuity, not to say they're not bad. Again, we write a lot of them. I've got 2 on myself. I love income annuities, but you have to understand sometimes they come with fees. And if you see these high guarantees of 6, 7, 8, even 10% simple interest, which some of them we offer those high interest rates, there is a catch. And that catch is that you have to understand the contract. So what do you get? What you should get before ever buying an annuity is this. This is called the Annuity Decision Guide for Savers, and I believe it's one of the best booklets on the pros and cons of annuities. Why do I believe that? Because I personally wrote it. Folks, since 9/11, I have personally accounted for well over 2,000 individual annuities, totaling nearly $400 million in premiums. And not only that, we have a wonderful staff and 2 other fiduciaries that can guide you through the annuity maze and help you select the annuity that's right for you. So if you're a saver worried about running out of money and you like the sound of these annuities, but you want to learn more about them, go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. In that little search bar, just type in downloads, and that'll take you to where you can download for free the Annuity Decision Guide for Savers. Now, in case you may not have access to the internet or you're afraid to download stuff off the internet, understand, just give us a call, 877-499-9255, and tell us you'd like us to mail you a hard copy of the Annuity Decision Guide for Savers. All right, when we return, we're going to be talking about the 4th safest investment, and this is going to surprise you because that's right, the Annuity King himself actually is going to recommend something that actually has money in the stock market. Great stuff coming your way. I'll be right back. Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a pension buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. Incidentally, on June 23rd of this week, we've got a great webinar coming up at 12 noon Eastern Time, and it's called So You Think You Want to Retire. This is a free webinar, only lasts about 20 minutes. This is a good one, folks. If you're thinking about retirement, you just want to log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, go to those educational opportunities and register for free. All right, it happened after the crash of 2008, and I'm hearing the same response from savers following the crash of 2020. Tony, after losing all that money I've been putting into the stock market, but now that it's starting to go back up, as we record this show on May 19th, 2020, should I leave it there? We're repeating the same thing. I heard this in 2008. Now that it's rebounding, maybe I ought to leave my money at risk, which once again proves the point. I have to ask this question. Why in the world, if you're retired or retiring soon, assuming you're a saver, would you want to take a bunch of risk when you don't have to? So our fourth and final safest asset for the 21st century, believe it or not, I know this is going to shock you, is what we call dividend-oriented ETFs. Now, what does ETF stand for? It stands for Exchange Traded Fund. Now, keep in mind, what we're talking about here in a minute is the stock market. Folks, I've been licensed to sell securities since 1985. I've never had a problem with the stock market. What I have a problem with is savers putting too much money in the stock market. And let me say this as a preface as we describe these in just a second. The description of this product I'm going to give you can lose money. The other three products basically are protected. We're talking about possibly, you don't have to, my wife Susan would never do this, possibly inserting some of your money into something like this. So it could make some sense. So let's take a look at this. We're generally tracking an index with this particular ETF. There's a bunch of them. We use Charles Schwab for our platform to grab these ETFs because they're very expensive. And basically in this particular ETF we're talking about, it has a bunch of stocks, basically large company stocks. Let's take a look at some of these. You probably recognize some of these names that are flying by the screen here. And you might say, well, yeah, Tony, I'd like to invest in this stock or this stock. But I always say, yeah, but what happens if that stock or this stock goes down? This way, with an ETF, we're spreading the risk among several different stocks. Now, as we'll see in a minute, yeah, it could still go down, but the beauty of this product is we can take some of our money, some of it, and if you want to continue to take a little bit of additional risk, you can. Now, I like this ETF. Why? Because savers like what we call dividends. So why do savers love these products? Well, first of all, they like the low expenses associated with it. That number is 0.06%. So folks, if you have $100,000 in this fund, that's only $60 a year. Now granted, as your advisor, we charge a small fee of 0.8%, but you know most growth mutual funds, they charge anywhere from 0.8% to 1%. So this is a huge savings in fees. The next thing people like about them is the dividends. This particular fund pays right at about 3.5%. So if you had $100,000 in the fund, it's going to pay about $3,500 in dividends. And even if the fund goes down, there's still going to be a dividend in most cases. Now, while dividends are not guaranteed, they're fairly predictable. And again, something savers like. Let's take a look at the yield on this. How has this actually performed over the years? Now, as you can see here, the first year, in the last 12 months basically, it's gone down about 10%. So it did lose money. It can lose money. Now, if we go through a longer period of time, let's say over 5 years, it's averaged a little over 5%. Not bad at all. And then finally, if you go back to inception, this fund came out in 2011. It made just over 10%. So not bad at all. So you think about this, you say, well, Tony, let's talk about these 4 safest investments again. And now you've introduced something that has an element of risk. Why would you do that? Because quite frankly, folks, there is no one size fits all out there. That's why you need an independent fiduciary that also has a background in retirement planning to help you with these investments. Here's why. It's funny how this has happened as we talk about the idea of dying and running out of money and people coming into me with all kinds of different notions from this last stock market crash. Some people are still okay having money in investments. You know what? I've had people that say, Tony, I know you love those annuities. I don't want any annuities. That's perfectly okay. We don't have to do annuities if you don't want to. Folks, again, I've been a fiduciary for years. We can take the Charles Schwab platform. We can get bank instruments through there for you. We can get government bonds for those investments through Charles Schwab. We do that. And then, of course, we can add some element, again, some percentage of the stock market to it. So here's what I would suggest you do. Rather than just kind of sit back and think, well, Tony, I don't really have an advisor. I don't know what to do. Why wouldn't you want to start safeguarding your money? If you've got like an old 401k at a previous employer, maybe you're retiring soon, you may have received an inheritance. Maybe you've got a bunch of money languishing in the bank and you need to start putting some of that money to work for you, but you want a trained retirement planning specialist that understands the value of a dollar and understands to make sure to get that money back to you before it's too late. Why don't you give us an opportunity to meet? It's easy to do, and there's absolutely no cost or obligation to do so. All you do is you log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Now, let me say something about our website. We've got all kinds of stuff on there, but what many people don't realize is we can talk by phone, we can meet in person, we can do a video chat, and again, at that first meeting, there is absolutely no cost or obligation. What we're going to do is we're going to put together a game plan for you. You're going to be able to look at that game plan, and for the first time more than likely in your life, you're going to see your life, your money play out, and how best you're going to use and enjoy and protect this money. And if you want to add this feature, without the fear of running out. And don't forget, we got a webinar coming up on Tuesday, Eastern Standard Time at 12 noon. So you think you want to retire. Good stuff, and we'll also have time for Q&A at the end of that webinar, so don't miss it. Just register for it at TonyWalkerFinancial.com under Educational Opportunities. Okay, does the Bible have anything to say about all of the reaction to the coronavirus and the futility of man and God's response to what man's trying to do with something he doesn't understand? Oh yeah, some good stuff coming up. You're going to find out that God actually has a sense of humor. I'm Tony Walker. Let me get a cup of coffee. I'll be right back. Our Tony Walker Financial Employee Spotlight shines today on Miss Shanna Petty. Shanna, thank you for coming from Bowling Green today to be with us.
Thank you for having me.
And we got to tell this quick story before we get into the interview with you. You know, we had a Shannon who still works with us, working for us, and we wanted to hire you, Shanna. And I was like, hey, Shanna, do you mind changing your name? We're afraid they'll get mixed up. I think I recommended Hazel. That was the name of my grandmother. That didn't go over too well, did it?
Not initially, no.
But we appreciate you sticking with Shanna. It's all worked out great. But tell us real briefly about your background. You came out of the banking industry, but a little different area of banking.
Right, I worked in the customer service side of the banking industry for mortgages specifically for about 9 years.
And you had to do a lot of phone work through that, didn't you? And I think that was the thing that impressed me about you. You know, the phone is so important in our business. You're the one that generally answers the phone. You know how picky I am about that phone. You're the first impression, and also you set up appointments, which you're doing a great job doing that. But tell the viewing audience a little bit about our process, how important those phone calls are, setting up the appointments, the second, third, the follow-up appointments, and all the detail that goes into those.
Well, obviously you're a very busy man, Tony, so we have a very high volume of calls on a daily basis, and my job is to coordinate those calls and schedule the appointments so you can see as many people as possible, because you do see a lot of people every day.
Whoa, 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 I do want to interrupt you there. So on average, now on average it fluctuates, but how many people on average, or maybe on the high days when I'm up in Louisville, how many appointments could that be in one day, Shannon?
You can see up to 25 people, give or take, on a Monday.
And then a lot of those people will call you back because we have to have second appointments and third appointments. So first of all, I want to say what a great job you're doing. People compliment you all the time. They're always saying, who's that girl on the phone answering all these questions and getting these appointments set up? But what does that lead to, you think, with the confidence that our potential clients see in us that we can stay that organized with all these appointments?
So it is a lot of appointments that you see on a daily basis, and it does take a lot of my focus to make sure those stay coordinated. But we also have a large staff that helps me keep those appointments organized and scheduled.
Well, Shanna, we appreciate so much of what you do and for taking care of all these appointments. I know the Saver clients we have and prospective clients do as well. So folks, again, if you contact our office, good chance you'll be talking to Shanna. Thanks again, Shanna.
Thank you.
Did you know there's a financial product that recently outperformed the stock market with no risk? It's called a fixed indexed annuity. I'm Tony Walker, and for the past 20 years, I've helped 2,000 savers enjoy the safety and security that fixed indexed annuities offer. So if you have money in a 401k, IRA, maybe a lump sum pension that you'd like to safeguard, why not consider a fixed indexed annuity with Tony Walker Financial? To meet with me, log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started. Here's a mathematical equation I bet you've never heard. The fear of death plus the futility of man equals laughter from God. You know, as we watch all these politicians and scientists try to fight a virus they can't see and in the meantime decimate our economy and our very lives, I'm kind of thinking about the futility of something I tried to do when I was younger, and that was hammer a nail as a 7-year-old helping out my granddad in Troy, Kentucky, along with Uncle Eddie. And it was funny, as I'm trying to hammer this nail and nothing's happening. I mean, it's a 16-penny nail, trying to drive it through this hard oak wood. My Uncle Eddie hollers over, hey, Tony, you hammer like lightning. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah, you never strike twice in the same place. So in other words, right now as a country, as we film this show on May 19th, 2020, we have more problems on our hands than ever. As a result, in my opinion, of man's futility trying to turn this virus around and some of the actions we have taken. But we realize that God sees these types of things, the actions of men, and He laughs. Don't believe me? Look at what the psalmist David said, a man after God's own heart. And we give credit to him in the book of Psalms, and we see in Psalms 2:1 the following. Why are the nations in an uproar, it says. Does that sound familiar? And the peoples devising vain, or what I would say, futile things. Are you seeing some of these similarities here with the coronavirus reaction? How vain and futile our actions have been, how futile all of this really is. But God's reaction, look at the next verse. He laughs. In fact, it says that not only does God laugh at men, but He scoffs at men with these futile efforts. One thing you don't want to do, folks, is have God laughing and scoffing at you. As well, let's move on to Psalm 37:12 and 13. In verse 12 it says, the wicked plots against the righteous and gnashes at him with his teeth. Now, I'm certainly not throwing all the scientists and politicians into that boat, but you got to sometimes wonder if there are people out there who really do like to kind of stir up the mess. And with our current leaders, I'm going to have to assume that they truly have had good intentions, but after all, we're human, and according to Scripture, you never know what people's motives really are. Either way, you know what God's reaction to all this is? Look at verse 13. That's right. The Lord laughs at them and sees that the day is coming. What is that day, folks? Well, that day is the day of one's death. And that's the whole point. No matter how hard you and I try to avoid death, we can't. It's kind of like me as a 7-year-old trying to drive that 16-penny nail into that thick piece of oak. I just couldn't do it. It was a futile effort. But you know who we need to hand that hammer over to? We need to hand that hammer over to God. He has the capability to drive that nail through that wood, and He has the capability to straighten up this country and our lives, if only but we trust Him. Well, how about you? As you think about your life and your money, I can't do the things of God, but I'm pretty good at helping people with their money and organizing things in such a way as so that they can use and enjoy and protect it. So if you're sitting there saying, well, Tony, I don't have a game plan. Nobody's sat down to lay out this stuff. I feel like I've got a risky baskets of funds sitting in my 401k. I got money over here earning 0.5%. I want to be able to use and enjoy this money without the fear of running out of it. Well, give us an opportunity to talk. All you got to do is log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, and once there, we're going to ask you to click on that Let's Get Started button. Now, that information is sent confidentially to Tony Walker Financial, and then we'll arrange a time either by phone, video, or in person to meet. And we can do that at either our Bowling Green, Louisville, or Lexington, Kentucky offices. So take advantage of meeting with us. Get a free written game plan to see how we can help you worry less about money. All right, next week, we're going to finish up this segment, but what we're going to talk about is, can you really retire? We're going to share some case studies with you. Good stuff coming your way, but between now and then, if all else fails, you remember to be worry-free. Make it a good one.